Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to Home Education Matters. Today we are going to be talking about maths, all things maths related with Veronika. And maths is one of those big and scary subjects, I think, and we'll be here to hold your hand through all of it and make it a little bit less scary. That's our plan for today. So, Veronika, would you like to tell us all about yourself and we can launch in and make people feel much better about maths?
So thank you for the introduction. It's always fun to be on a podcast and just getting a little bit into it. So, as you said, I'm Veronika. I tutor maths. I have been tutoring maths literally forever. So
is that what it feels like?
Oh yeah, and it really, I mean, half my life really, and I'm not even that old, so yeah, I got a long time.
You look quite young. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm 33.
You look a lot younger than 33. Maths keeps you young.
I think so.
You're winding the numbers back somehow. You've got some sort of clever mathematical trick.
Yeah, it's all of us mathematicians. We can do things with numbers. Yeah, so I basically started tutoring when I was still, not even before I went to uni, just just here and there helping a friend or friend of a friend. And I realized, it's kind of nice pocket money. So I carried on when I went to study maths at university. And I was training to be a teacher. And then I realized that I don't really want to be a teacher because I really do enjoy the tutoring and I was really good at it. So I basically didn't even kind of finish up to master's. I said, well, it's like, all the money and everything goes into education. And if you don't even want to do it, I said, well, maybe one day if I change my mind. So I just finished with bachelor's and I was already basically in my tutoring business and having loads of happy students and like great results. And I thought, okay, that's my calling. So that was it. And I just pretty much did a little bit of work in schools here and there, but was basically just to help my tutoring when I needed a little bit.
I was a teacher briefly, and I've also briefly done tutoring, and I can safely say that I do totally understand why you went the tutoring route.
Yeah,
it's very rewarding, isn't it?
It is, exactly. Even when I went to schools and like would be teaching or helping or doing any sort of work there, it was just telling me, yeah, that's definitely not what you want to do because that's so different to tutoring. Maybe if I wouldn't done tutoring at first, maybe if I started teaching first, but I've seen like so big difference. So, it's really nice to have a student who might like maths. Well, that's great. So we're like-minded, or might not maybe like maths, but just obviously comes to tutor to get some help. And so they obviously is a little bit different than in school. Very often they'll be bored, so because so many students in one room and someone knows more, someone knows less, and it's difficult. Or if you have at least small groups, right? Because tutoring could be done in small groups as well. But then again, you really put them together carefully, so they ideally would just even enhance their each together, So it's just better than being in a room with 30 other students, like. Everyone is just different and it's not working. I think schools really need to change. And I can see why the home community is really so big because like they see there is a problem, it's not changing, or we'll change it because we can. So, not in every country we're legal, right? So that's kind of problem, but at least luckily here we could do it. I really can see how it's such a difference. You just put your child out of school, let's say they 14 years old, but they're at a level of like, several years behind with their studies. And then you do half a year, 1 year, and then huge jump. Either you as a parent is just really completely different than, especially in maths, just you might be so behind because you miss a little bit thing, and in maths everything kind of is like a snowball, right? So and on the other hand, the more maths you know, the easier it is. It's sort of like once the snowball's big, you just kind of a little bit push it and it goes on its own down the hill. So it's a good thing but also a bad thing because you really should not have any gaps at the first place.
That's a good point, because I have a pet theory that anyone who listens to my podcast will know. And that is that I think that Key Stage 3 is a waste of time. I think that it is just this pointless filler, repetition of topics and subjects. My only exception is maths. Maths is my only exception, where I think that actually maths is one of those subjects that it's really helpful to carry through all the time, and mostly home educators stagger their exams, so they will do 1 or 2 exams per year and focus on those subjects. And I always say that when you're doing that, you should always run a little bit of maths alongside it, because like you said, I think maths is one of those things that the more often you do it, even if you're only doing little bits, it's a bit like keeping your muscles going at the gym, isn't it? It's just, I find it really helpful to keep doing little bits of maths, no matter what you're studying and no matter when your exam is going to be.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, because especially recently, I'll try to change the way how I do my tuition. And I really do encourage, sort of even like by really telling the parents, if you book lessons with me, you really either need to do it or we need to replace it somehow. If really, sometimes a child might get ill or something, but let's not skip. And it's such a difference, because when I was a little bit more, yeah, sure, no problem, you can cancel, we can skip, you go on holidays, no problem, then it was really showing that it's not as helping. So I found out it doesn't even matter if you do, let's say, half an hour per week, or if you do an hour per week, or if you do like many hours, of course it's something else, that's for full teaching. But if you need the extra boost, or just like keep it going, it doesn't even matter how long per week you do, let's say with a tutor or someone who's dedicated to teach you something, as long as it's really repetition every week. So when I had someone who, let's say for financial reasons, they wanted to switch, so we switched to fortnightly, it just wasn't the same. So I said, how about we do half the length, but really every week? And so we did that. And again, it's just skyrocketed. All the learning just went back to track where it was before. And it was completely different story how the learning was progressing compared to being like every other week. So that's definitely what you say. Absolutely agree. And this is really what I focus on with all my students, always saying we need to focus on having the repetition. I know sometimes you might need a break or something, then we'll make up. We'll just have rather 2 lessons the next week, or just make sure there wouldn't be big breaks.
While you're saying this, I'm sure there's going to be people listening who say that's all very well, but trying to drag my child to do some maths is an experience I only want to have once a week, and it's not something I want to do daily. I know that my daughter isn't a big fan of maths, and it is a bit sort of kicking and screaming to get her to do maths. And so, limit maths to a degree just because it makes the house a little bit more harmonious. Do you have any tips for people who have children who really, really don't like doing maths?
Yeah, well, it's not always easy for everyone to achieve it, but ideally the key goal would be make the children, basically help them to start liking maths and show them how it could be easy. So go baby steps, as long as you do some steps. And you can see the change in the approach when students, like, first they start, I don't know, I'm not good at maths, or I hate maths, just all this negativity, and find out that later they're like, oh wait a moment, this is actually good, I can do this. And I had students who literally tell me, wait, I want to do more of this because I'm really good at it now, like, let me, and like super excited. And that is really it. And then they then telling me happily, and I've done more of the homework, and I just was really good at it because that was like so similar what you showed me, and I did so much practice. So it's really about exciting them about it. So of course, if you do something you don't like, I don't know, you don't like doing dishes, right? So you just don't want to do it. You're not going to enjoy it. But maybe you get some, I don't know, really good brush, and that really like helps you to wash dishes. Or maybe you get a dishwasher, right? That helps you washing as well. You just need to do the drying or something. So that's the same with the maths. And what I see with many students, it's not always going to click with everyone. Some of them will be trying to resisting, but always whenever we hit that spot when they found, oh, okay, algebra is really horrible, but I can do fractions now. And I enjoy them because now I know and I feel like I'm good at it. So I want to show everyone, look at me, I can do some maths. And they feel really good because they always thought like fractions are the like a crazy thing and nobody can do it. And now they mastered it and they can say like, look at me, I can do this. Again, it's just that snowballing, because then you can build on it and then you can build on that an extra thing. So it's just starting to be positive experience, and the topic could be expanded always from there. And then we just here and there add that kind of like a little bit troublesome things, but just like, basically like it's spoon fed. And then we focus on what's going well. Then you build the confidence, you basically change the attitude. And that is really the key thing. And again, I know it might be not always easy to achieve, but that would be ideally what parents would like to go for. Trying to find some topic that the child can do, then they will change slowly towards, okay, well, actually fractions are good.
I completely agree about confidence, because my daughter always considered herself very bad at maths. And then I was doing some maths with her, which I think was kind of standard form. I'm very bad at maths, but is that the one where you have a little number above the big number? Okay. This is the level of my maths, by the way.
Yeah, it's like a number times 10.
Yes, exactly. She got it very quickly and she really liked it. And from there, she kind of got a little bit of her confidence back. And then she's been doing algebra. And for some reason, she finds algebra really easy. She's dyslexic, and I'm convinced it's something to do with that whole visual spatial patterning, that kind of thing. And she finds algebra really easy. And now, just like you say, she's now doing more than she's given. And she's saying things like, oh, I find this really easy. And she would never have said that. So I think what you're saying about finding something, even if it's something reasonably easy, that they can feel good about and that they can feel confident in, and then just expanding that a little bit, adding a few more difficult things in. I'm guessing that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. In many words, and you summed it up perfectly.
That's why I host the podcast. Okay, so I wanted to speak to you about GCSEs. So let's work right from the beginning and work through the process of GCSEs. And the very first thing that people need to know is that there are many different types of GCSE maths. There is GCSE and IGCSE, or International GCSE. There is Foundation GCSE and there is Higher GCSE. There is EdXL and OCR and Cambridge and AQA. I don't think I've forgotten any. So they're the different exam boards. And then I think within the exam boards, there's different papers, aren't there? I think EdXL do two different exams, do they? I seem to recall they do, but maybe I'm wrong. Do they?
I'll give it the structure.
Tell me the structure, because already I'm still confused, because it is a confusing process that normally we leave to schools, and when we don't, we then have to delve into this quagmire of exam boards and exam specifications and things. So tell us all about it. Guide us or hold our hand.
So basically, imagine it like a little journey, and you would always have one or two options. So if we start at the journey, the first crossroad would be GCSE or IGCSE, because those are different exams, generally interchangeable in terms of how colleges would approach it, universities would approach it, as if you got some sort of GCSE or IGCSE, although there are sometimes people mention that there would be some schools that they don't quite like IGCSEs and would prefer GCSEs, but overall it really should be equal.
Colleges, do you mean?
Yeah, some colleges, and even actually really even some universities would look at GCSEs in Canada way. So at least that's what I've been told. So but it could be rumors, or it could be that someone mentioned, well, I had this and it's that anecdotal experience. So
I think what tends to happen sometimes is the admin kind of admission staff don't quite know what an IGCSE is, and then when you kind of mail them and say no, it's an international GCSE, they're like, oh, okay then. I think they sometimes think it's like internet GCSEs or something. Yeah.
I know.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I just did it online. No, it's an international GCSE, right? And it is exactly of equal weighting and equal standing.
Yeah. So the difference is that normally school would be in choosing everything pretty much up to the point of the last crossroad, which would be the foundation or higher, but I'll get there. Right now in the first one with GCSE or IGCSE. So basically for maths, it doesn't quite matter, because you could do easily as a home educated, you could easily do GCSE as well as the IGCSE, the international one. So there are no hurdles in either one path. So it pretty much is up to the, let's say, parent together with their child to decide what they would like more. Because in some subjects, I know it might be kind of troublesome to do, let's say, GCSE, and they need to go the IGCSE route.
International GCSEs don't tend to have coursework or practical components. All the sciences, for example, need to be IGCSEs because they don't have that. But yes, you're right, in maths, there is no coursework or practical components. So you can just have a look at whichever you fancy. And how would you advise people best to make that decision between them?
And so that is the second crossroad, which technically would be, well, it depends. You can first think about overall how you're doing, whether foundation or higher. But I think better would be look on all the paper, because that helps you later. You can even change. You can first be thinking, well, maybe I'm not that good at maths, I might be doing foundation. And I've had so many students who were entered for foundation by their schools, even, for example, not even being home educated. So the schools would decide generally for them. And we just did so well. I said, you know what, apply that. You wouldn't do higher, because you can easily do higher, and they would be really great at it. So that can be changed. So that could be our last crossroad. So I would say, let's look at exam boards.
So this is for IGCSEs and GCSEs, yes, looking at the exam boards.
Exactly.
Yeah, got you.
So each exam has got different exam boards. And I wouldn't necessarily say one is better than the other. It really is the best to look at their past papers and see basically how the past papers feel to you. Some are a little bit more wordy, some are a little bit more obviously just relying more like a show formula and then use it. Some of them are more complicated questions, so it's like a mini mark question and you need to do a lot of steps. Some of them are broken down in a bit, so depends on what works for you better. One quite important difference between GCSE and IGCSE at maths. GCSE is 3 papers. It is 1 a non-calculator paper and 2 calculator papers, while IGCSE is only 2 papers and they both calculator.
Is that for all the exam boards or just for Edexcel?
Don't want to say 100% just in case, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yes.
Okay, so IGCSE is all calculator options.
Yeah. So they basically normally would run on those same dates, but then GCSE will get one more extra date for the 3rd paper. So they will be done all the same time. And you have, for IGCSE, you have some regional. That's why something's like, let's say 1FR means paper 1 of foundation, but regional. So that's for when you're outside of the UK. But those are minor differences there, really. So generally, the biggest difference is that IGCSE for maths got only 2 papers, both with calculator. So many students go for it because they feel confident. Oh, it's much better with calculator. I don't have to be worried about little calculations. Technically, sometimes they would ask you, show you're working in a way. So technically, you should know how to do it. But you can always at least check your answer. Let's say they ask you to do column multiplication. You can then check it on your calculator. So it is kind of like the calculator's got your back, So
yeah. But I feel like I have to say, I feel like there must be lots of people listening to this thinking, why on earth would anyone do the Edexcel GCSE if you can have fewer exams and have your calculator?
Exactly. On the other hand, some students do really excel well in the non-calculator because, of course, it's meant a little bit like just using a little bit of mental maths, slightly easier questions, so they can bag a lot of marks on the non-calculator paper. It feels easier because it technically it must be easier. It must be using just nice numbers, so it kind of might give an extra boost in the overall grading. So that's why I say, or everyone who's not sure and has got the option, like home educated's got the option for maths, really, it's either way is fine. Look at the papers, get the feel of it. Be careful, the papers sometimes change. For example, I know that AQA recently mentioned that they would be getting rid of the multiple choice questions, which very many students would be opting for AQA for that reason, that they like, oh, at least I know one of these answers be correct. So there were always a few questions that you would choose A, B, C, D, basically.
AQA love multiple choice questions. Yeah. AQA should be called the multiple choice exam board.
Yes, I know, but they said they will be getting rid of it for this summer. So that's what I'm saying. It sometimes changes. So past paper are not always the best indicator, but most of the time, yes. And of course, then if you think you narrowed down, it might be good to have a look at the official websites of, let's say, Edexcel, anyone, look at the specification, the newest information. It seems like, oh, it's just so much information, but it will be really useful. If it's all up to you to choose, then make sure you choose based on being very well informed.
Yeah, we did a podcast on exams, actually, and probably the biggest piece of advice we gave was to do your research really thoroughly for each subject, get all the specifications, do the past papers, and because it can make a difference between, well, it's definitely a difference between grades, but it can be a difference between your child enjoying the subject and not enjoying it, which is a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Basically would go now finally to the foundation or higher, and that really could be fairly fluid. As I said, I've got students who would be, it was never the other way, that there will be someone doing higher and we find out, you know what, you'd be better suited for foundation. That generally never really happens. When you're already aiming for higher, it just means, yes, you would be surely good at it to get at least that passed, at least grade 4, but probably more.
What is the difference between foundation and higher?
So, first of all, foundation is obviously the foundation. So it's a little bit easier maths. There will be some cross topics that will be in both papers, therefore both tiers. But generally, it's the easier maths. It's more, you can a little bit more imagine it like when you do functional skills. So there will be actually a lot of maths that you would even learn in Key Stage 2. So when I'm telling my students who just maybe left Key Stage 2, went to Key Stage 3, and I said, remember, you learned this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you'll be doing this in GCSE again. But of course, that's not the thing, how you don't have to learn anymore, because you learn everything in maybe up to year 7, but you want to retain the information and keep going, and you learn something Key Stage 2, something else on top of it Key Stage 3, although it looks like it's the same thing, but you're just expanding your knowledge. So definitely I would still learn through Key Stage 3 as well, even if someone would say, I just want to sit foundation. So yeah,
foundation kind of maps to the end of Key Stage 3, doesn't it?
Yes, though, because you can get up to grade 5 in foundation.
You're capped, aren't you, with your grade?
Yes, that's
you can't get higher than a 5.
Exactly. So, but you would still be learning new topics that would be, as you normally, let's say, in school, if you following curriculum as schools would do, then you still, let's say, be learning in year 10 new topics, even if you be aiming for foundation, because those will be generally then aiming towards grade 5. And it's good to have the extra backup, because while you supposedly sitting, let's say, easier paper, and if you just after the pass, you like, well, I get 4, maybe if I get lucky, I get 5, that's great. I don't need more, I'll go for foundation. The trouble technically is to get that pass grade, you need to get a fair amount of marks.
It's a high pass rate, isn't
yes.
it?
If you need to get maybe 50-60% to get a pass on foundation, but only usually about 20% to get pass on higher. So to get the same grade, you need to do way more in that paper. So for some students who generally would be able to, let's say, do all of it, but they just either can't or didn't, or just happen not to do it really well, the time management for the exam, that they will be struggling with it. And I had some students who were like on a borderline between foundation high in their knowledge already, but we're just saying, well, I'm supposed to be sitting foundation, everyone's telling me foundation, so we are working towards it. And whenever we did assessment, that being timed as well, we just couldn't reach the grade 4. And I said, you know what, let's just try, just for fun, let's do higher. And actually, although obviously it wasn't the grade, because we would not be looking at all the other topics that are mainly in higher and therefore not at all in foundation, I think it was pretty much the first assessment we've done, timed one, that he would just about pass the grade 4. I said, see, that's it, you really should be sitting higher, because imagine what happens if we actually learn that now, if we focus on that. So yes, and of course it was the result was that we would be going for higher, and it would be just much better. So if you are really well performing in foundation, it might be maybe worth looking at higher paper. If you are struggling for foundation, of course, stay for foundation, but work on the time management and make sure that you can do enough. It's kind of interesting thing, because it doesn't mean you have to know too much maths to also get pass on the higher, but maybe the maths, especially for IGCSE, might be feeling okay, like, because I have a calculator and I can learn how to do these calculations, this formula. Maybe I know nothing about in IGCSE. Actually, there are some different topics, for example, differentiation, that wouldn't be in GCSE, but you don't have to touch it with 6-foot pole if you don't want to, and you can still pass on higher paper, because technical differentiation would be more rather further maths, or then in A-level. So
this is actually,
in a way, goes a little bit elsewhere.
That's what I've heard, because my son is doing A-level maths, and I think that IGCSE maths is like a slightly higher stepping stone towards A-level, right? It's the IGCSE has topics that the GCSE doesn't have, but the A-level does have, right?
Yeah, and though even in IGCSE there could be, and I'm, let's say, now talking about what I tutor the most, which is Edexcel exam board for IGCSE, actually, as well as GCSE. It's just the most common one.
That is the one that most home educators do as well.
Yeah.
I think the thing with foundation and shifting from foundation to higher is that it can be quite difficult for some students psychologically to have a paper in front of them that they can't answer like 60% of the questions. Whereas the foundation, they may feel, oh, look, I can answer like most of the questions. So it has a kind of psychological boost. But I think if you can prepare the child and say, look, sit the higher, even though realistically most of it you don't need to worry about, you do have a chance of getting a higher grade, don't you?
Yes, exactly. So you're not limited there. I mean, technically, yes, by grade 9, but that's the top, so that's okay. but but it really is. If you go for the higher paper, knowing that, let's say you are kind of borderline, so maybe you'll be more comfortable with foundation in a way that, well, you can maybe do pretty much all the questions, but the time could be really the problem, especially if you have extra time, maybe you have some special education needs, so you might be given extra time. And extra, I had students who had people who be scribing for them, reading for them. So many things could be done. But even that, of course, might be not enough. So it's better to say, well, look, you sit this paper, basically you can completely disregard about half of it completely and focus on this half. And from there, get those, let's say 20-25%, depends on exam board and everything. That's the way. So if they would that, okay, so I'll literally be just focusing on that. Obviously, look through the whole paper. There might be questions towards the end of the exam. You're like, oh, actually, I know this. I can do this. But generally, it is obviously the beginning of the paper are easier questions, and then goes more towards like more difficult questions while you go further. So, but it's definitely worth looking through the whole paper, of course, just in case if there's someone fairly like, oh, actually, I learned that. I'm fine with this.
Yeah. Why is foundation so tight on time then?
Again, because you have to get that pass, because usually the pass is the minimum everyone wants. You need to do a lot of the percentage of the paper. That's why.
Yeah. So it's just so much more content that you need to do to get that 80% or whatever the pass rate is.
Yeah.
And so is the foundation one paper that you sit?
It's always the same way. So if you do either foundation or higher, for example, IGCSE, you would sit one paper the same day. And you'll be just given the correct tier, and then usually in a week or 2 weeks time you'll be sitting the other paper.
So it's not the case that people sitting foundation sit, say, paper 1, and everyone higher also sit paper 1, but then higher sit paper 2. It's not this, it's not the case that they kind of sit an additional paper.
No. They all sit either easier or more difficult paper, basically. So at the same day, then the next day, and if it's GCSE, even the third day for the third paper. And again, they all sitting both foundations and higher, and the exam boards as well. They have it all the same, and so you just need to know that you've been given correct exam board and correct tier. Just make sure, because of course we are humans and error might happen. So I've had stories when someone was given wrong paper, either the tier or something. So really careful with that. And if anything, just very quickly need to make sure, well, this is not what I'm supposed to be sitting. So
there were some quite famous stories last summer of not only people being given the wrong exam board, but people being given the wrong subject completely. So I think somebody was due to sit maths, and they were given a biology paper, and when they queried it, they were like, "Can't you just sit biology instead?" Instead of maths, similar. Well, it's a science. However, I think that last summer was an unusual year, I think, because it was the first time after COVID that we'd all been piling into exam centres. So I wanted to ask you about further maths, because I know that some crazy people love maths and and they want to do lots more of it. So tell me about further maths GCSE. Is there a reason for it? Is there a point for it? Should you just launch into A-level? What's going on with that?
That's a good question you have. And I would advise, if someone is, a crazy person, loves to do a lot of maths and doesn't want to be assuming they would want to do A-level maths and doesn't want to be a little bit feeling behind in A-level, then having further maths of GCSE is really good thing to do, because basically all the students who are doing further maths, they are telling me when they're then in A-level, oh, it's just like we learn all this already. I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are we just doing the same thing? So basically further maths really prepares you for about half of the first year of A-level. So if you do really well in further maths, if you do take it and do well, you could feel very relaxed at the beginning of A-level. So it is useful, it's helpful. And when I have students who don't do the further maths. You can easily just have a high grade on GCSE and feel fine, and that's okay, and you can go study A-level, no problem. But then you would be saying, oh, but some of my classmates, they're so good, they're so ahead, and I'll just feel I'm a little bit behind. And it's not necessarily being behind, but it's just like those who did the further, they are ahead. So ahead of what the curriculum generally should be. So if you could do, and if you feel you have time for it, and just, and you sure you want to do A-level maths, I think it's good to do further. If you home educated and don't want to pay yet another exam, then maybe just study it on your own and don't go for the exams. But if you're at school, obviously you can just take the exam, that's fine. But yeah, just learning the further maths, even without doing the exam, because they not actually need it. As long as you do well on GCSE maths, usually 7 and more in a grade, then you'll be easily pretty much could go to study my A-level maths anywhere. Doing further maths is really helpful. It's not actually necessary, but it's very helpful. So I would advise whoever can do it for A-level, if you want to do A-level.
So let me talk to you about resources, because a lot of home educators are on a budget. They don't want to use tutors, they don't want to use online schools, and they don't want to use online courses. So what sort of resources would you recommend for people who are on a really strict budget, and because the exam is costly enough? So what are your favourite go-to resources for maths?
So definitely, I always tell everyone they should get a good textbook at first, because that will help you you can have all the resources in the world, everything online, all the website, they're great, and I do recommend them as well. And I will mention maybe a few that I usually say all the time, but first, get a book. And to be honest, it could be easily a second-hand book from eBay or somewhere. So it doesn't have to be costly either. So just a good textbook, that will really help you to keep an eye, if you are going for the exam, so you want to keep somehow the curriculum. So it helps you to keep an eye on it, what you're supposed to be learning, and something that you have at hand easily, and is not gonna just somewhere you go through your favorite website, but oh, this topic is somehow not there. Maybe they just didn't add it yet, or maybe they just might have a little bit different specification, which is, let's say, aimed at GCSE, but actually you do IGCSE, and maybe you do want to learn the differentiation after all. So having a good book doesn't have to be necessarily always aimed at the exact exam board. Funny enough, actually, that's not even that important, because the exam board, then you just look at the past papers and learn from those. So another part of the resources is to basically work with the appropriate past papers. But some books are even kind of like all boards together, but you would like to know ideally whether you do GCSE or IGCSE, and then of course whether you're aiming generally for foundation or higher. If unsure, as I said, maybe look at the paper, see what sort of maths is there, and if you think you could do at least 20% on the higher, or if you think you rather do the foundation, because again, usually roughly about 20% on the higher means getting the pass grade, getting 4. So the books, definitely, as I said, then it depends the exam, technically exam board, but actually not that super important for textbooks. And then definitely foundation or higher. That is very important, more important than what exam board at that stage for books. And then you just go, if you want to really be as little cost as possible, just go on websites like Maths Genie, websites like Code Maths. That's usually the most to go. There is one new one launched. I still don't remember exactly the name. I think it's GCSE maths questions. It's one of my colleague tutors recently put together really nicely, well done, from past papers. Basically topic by topic. It's overwhelming. There's so much there. It's always the question and then answers, like written by hands, like really enormous amount of work you put in it. So I'll just like tell everyone about it wherever I go, because I really like it and use it as well.
Perhaps if you could come on the Home Education Matters Facebook group, Veronika, and put your favourite maths websites, those ones that you mentioned. Was it Corbett Maths, Maths Genie, and that new one?
Things that the GCSE maths questions, I think that's how it's called. And there was one also I used to use a little bit more in the past. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just I kind of shifted a bit, but it's also Mr. Barton Maths that I used a lot, and some of my colleague teachers from schools when I would be working in the past also were really obsessed with Mr. Barton Maths. And all these are for free. Then you have things like Twinkle, which generally people might be thinking is maybe better a little bit more for primary, but actually it's got really good resources for higher as well, going onwards, higher level maths. So Twinkle could be good. It's usually subscriptions better, so you will have access to what you need, but it's not really that much. So I would say that, because I use Twinkle as well for really like nice worksheets, really well made to put together assessments and everything. So that's good. So that would be the second kind of batch of resources. Again, talking about as free as possible or extremely low small cost. And then what I already mentioned, definitely, if we're now talking specifically preparing for GCSEs, past papers. When to start with them is a good question. Everyone might be a little bit different. Definitely at least a year before the exams should be already starting with past papers, but someone starts even earlier. So getting the feel of it. And I would say, because the exams are changing, start ideally first actually from the newest ones. Some people would say, oh no, leave the newest ones for later, but you would really want to get feel of what was in the newest ones, because they'll be more relevant to yours. So if you start with very old ones, you find out later you did so many old ones, but actually, wait a minute, that sort of question and topic is not there anymore, and I was learning so much about it to be able to do it. So I would go from the newest ones ideally, especially after the specification changed in 2017. So any of the older ones, when they were the grading A, B, C, D, it changed different years in GCSE and IGCSE, but like, that kind of old specification, it's okay as well to practice with it, but you might find actually maybe a lot of it way easier, because overall the level really went up with both GCSE and IGCSEs. So really acing the old paper doesn't have to mean anything, so careful with that.
Yeah, that would be annoying, wouldn't it? If you were doing very well with the old specification, then the new one came along and you weren't. To finish off, because I feel like we're sort of reaching the end of our maths journey, which is good for me because I'm not a big maths fan. So what would be your top tip for home educating parents who are helping their child with maths? Maybe their child's like 13, 14, something like that. What would be your top tip?
So depends on, if you feel like you can do maths yourself, then just try to not be too strict about it, telling you have to do this. Then remember the positive reinforcement. Try to find things that are working well for the child and go from there. So even if you're not quite following the curriculum, I do that very often in my tutoring. I just say, you know what, seems like this is a big step up. Maybe we'll look at this first, maybe go a little bit back, give you the foundations, like you will ready with that, and then we can move on. So just try to not to push the learning the way, because that's not gonna go down well usually. So just try to find a good way how to learn. If you're not sure about your own maths level and whether you can teach it, and maybe not really quite sure about even using books, that's the thing. Usually you say, oh, you just need to be like one step ahead or one extra, but not really for maths, because it doesn't kind of apply, again, because maths is so connected. And very often I say, for example, look at this topic, say this is very similar like that topic, either we already learned or you'll be learning later, and then you will just be like, oh yeah, that's also like that formula actually is pretty much the same for this and that. And so because I know all of it, and that's why, let's say, really tutor all levels, everything, I like to keep the curriculum live in my head, and then I know
you need a kind of bird's eye view looking down on it all.
Exactly. And you said you hopefully probably learned that in when you were, let's say, 13 years old, or I don't know, when we were in year 8, or and if you can't give the overall bird view, or not sure that you can do extra of your, of course you can then try to and look for other resources, more or less paid, or some sort of classes and stuff. So, but just again, try to, because that's what, if you home educated, the overall idea is to make it tailored, right? So it's always with maths going from, because maths can be tackled from many ways. It doesn't have to be just like when you learn alphabet, usually you go A, B, C, D. So you can do a little bit of like detour and start somewhere else. So just go from what it goes and start the snowball effect from whatever point, and you'll get there. But don't get too stressed if it feels like it's not going down well, or I told you 20 times it's like this and you still don't remember. It's just because maybe your child learns different way, maybe needs more visuals, and there could be so many visuals in maths, and people don't believe me about, like, I draw all the time in my whiteboard and just do all these things, and everyone's like, okay, that makes sense. And I talk about apples and oranges instead of like X and Y in algebra and things like that, and that makes more sense. So just like using real life examples. So if all of that the parent can do, that just to make maths more real, more like it's not just some random numbers and letters, but it applies on this. And when we talk about area, I'll talk about garden. If we talk about volume, I'll talk about like a juice, you know, like you have in a small bottle, big bottle. So like, you know, what is more, how many milliliters? So you imagine things. So a lot of things in maths could be really imagined. Yes, there are some things that looks a little bit more difficult to some find some examples. Make the maths be more approachable, more easier if it's in your power, or find out someone who can help you to help your child to find maths more approachable, because then there's the switch and they start like, this is good, and then and this bit of that and this as well, and it's just like,
yeah, they sometimes just need kick-starting, don't they, with somebody that has an enthusiasm for it, and then you can go your own way a little bit from that.
Exactly. Yeah, so just maths is just needs a little bit different approach sometimes. Find the ways how it works, and that's sometimes more difficult than actually teaching the maths itself.
That's one of the beauties of home education, is that you know your child so well because you spend all your time with them, that you tend to know the kind of things that work and that don't work, or you're able to make that quick shift when something isn't working, or you sort of get that response and you think, oh, okay, so this is how they like doing it. And that is one of the beauties. It's very difficult to do that as a teacher when you've got 30 children in a class, because you just can't shift and change like that. So thank you so much, Veronika. It's been really lovely chatting with you today. Could you tell us where our listeners could find you on social media or websites or whatever if they wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the easiest is to find me my website, and then I have other links and everything in there. So my business is called Your Maths Tutor. So I'm yourmathstutor.com. So fairly easy. Someone asked, who is it? That's Your Maths Tutor. So yeah, when I start myself, Veronika, your maths tutor, you know, so that's how
you're everyone's maths tutor now.
I know. So I'll just go with it. So yeah, so yourmathstutor.com, that's the website. And then I have some little bit of YouTube channel. I'm so backlogged with work, so I don't have that much there, but I run through one past paper, so you know, you can just see some questions there being answered, and so that might be a little bit helpful. And on my Facebook, I have Instagram that is just so overwhelming, so I don't do anymore. But
yeah, Instagram is just a bit that way, isn't it?
I really love being in these home education groups, because I just, like, instead of me going to sleep, I just open my Facebook and I'm, oh, you need, okay, I'll answer, hi, hello, that's not a problem. Just get the textbooks and this and that. And
you are so helpful in the homeschooling group for that. If there's a maths question, I always know you're going to hop on and give lots of reassurance. It's very nice. Yeah. And so you teach from Key Stage 3 all the way to A-level, right?
I do teach even primary as well.
Primary all the way through to A-level.
Primary students as well, yes. Like right now, we've been with my longest ones primary are not just 2 years. We're doing 2 years. I had one student who we started just from GCSE, now is our 6th year together at his last year at university. So yeah, I really do teach everything, but most inquiries I get are generally like a preparation towards GCSE. So it could be from late Key Stage 3, or then generally GCSE either like the year before or the actual year of the exam. So that's what I tutor most often, because that's what I've been most often asked to tutor, but I can do everything.
Yeah. So did you say you go all the way through to university as well?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you do primary to university. So you do like 4 to 21.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a lot of maths.
And well, actually the age is just the number. I also tutor adult learners. So for various numeracy tests, then retake GCSEs and GMAT and other things like that. So yeah, anything that's maths, I could do. Everyone.
What's your favorite maths topic to teach? What's the one you love? Like, which one are you like? No, honestly, what is it with you? I asked this of a history tutor, and she was like, "Can I give like 5?" It's like, no, I know you love your subject, but I want one. One, please, one. No, you can give me 2. Go on, I'll let you.
Okay, 2. It's just 2. So algebra and trigonometry.
Okay, they sound quite hard.
It's because they're the most difficult ones. and therefore students need the most help with them. And because I didn't do them so often, just so therefore not even like I wouldn't be good at them before, but it's just literally I've seen it all by now. So it's just I know it so well. It's like when you know your friend really well, you become really close. So that's me in algebra. Although I really always loved algebra since I was a child as well. But that's also because obviously you learn trigonometry a bit later. Maybe I would have loved trigonometry earlier if I would learn that earlier. So that's why kind of algebra myself. Trigonometry, because students also need about algebra. So algebra and trigonometry, I really can't separate them. They're both equally my favorites.
I've got a theory that I've just come up with while you're talking, that people would like maths more if they changed the names of the subjects. So was it Friends or was it The Big Bang Theory, where the episodes were called something like The One About or The One With? And they should do that for maths. So for calculus, no, wait, I don't know anything about calculus. For algebra, you could have the one with the letters. And then for like trigonometry, you could have the one with the triangles. I'm just making that up. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah.
I think people would like maths a lot more if you gave it cuddly, touchy-feely names, because, I mean, the names, calculus, trigonometry, differentiation, is enough to scare the living God out of you, isn't it? I mean, it's terrifying. They need to give them cuddly names. They need to call them Bernard and Humphrey and things like that. And I think people would like maths a lot more. There you are. That's my proposition to you.
I actually do that.
Oh my God. I thought I'd invented it and you've been doing it. That is classic. Come on, then. What do you call these things?
This is the one where we do all these triangles, and then we have algebra. This is when alphabet means numbers, so we just mix them all together. And as we now start talking not just about numbers, but bananas and oranges, and so yeah, that's what I do. But like you have really good proposal. I think I might have maybe not mentioned it myself, so I'm glad you did mention it. So everyone else who's doing maths out there should start also doing cuddly names, because Definitely. They really are more. And students are, yeah. So we're doing counting these oranges and apples now, right? Yeah, that's it.
We're doing the one with the oranges and apples now. Yeah, that's the one we're doing. Yeah, but then when they go to university, they'll say, is this differentiation? They'll be like, excuse me, is this the one with the fruit? I think you're in the wrong university. Anyway, thank you so much for today. It's been really fun chat. I didn't think maths would be so much fun. So there you are. It's a miracle.
Fun, really.
You've converted me. You've converted me to maths podcasts. And that's the first step, isn't it? Let's face it. Thank you, Veronika. It's been very lovely chatting.
Thank you very much, Eleanor.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's Home Education Matters podcast. See you at the next one. Have a lovely day.